I'm doing another one of these in my pajamas. And I'm in the basement closet thing. And I have this like, karak. You can't see that because the camera is bad. It's the camera on my laptop that prevents you from needing to look at my wrinkles in detail. Karak chai mug. So I can't stop thinking about George's talk at Linux App Summit. I think there is there's a real. I'm going to close this window because Nautilus keeps refreshing as this video is getting updated, which is a good thing. I think that there's kind of like coherence and agreement around a lot of these things, but I really feel like George is kind of the few conversations I've had with him, he puts them together in a way where most people will be able to understand what he's saying, and I think most people will agree with a lot of what he's saying. And it makes a lot of sense. And there are a lot of these things that really align with my keynote from last year at Guadec, and a lot of my thinking for a long time. George is he's more in the weeds than I am, or that I've ever been, or will ever be. But there's a lot of stuff here that I think is actually worth digging into. So I like tweeted, it's tweets even if it's on Mastodon, this like my notes that I took during his talk, and I actually want to sit and listen to his talk again. I'm going to start with this implied question, which is he mentions like $1 million industries, $1 billion industries. And there's this kind of implied question of like, how do you make the Linux desktop a $1 billion industry? And there are going to be some aspects of that I think that people are going to struggle with. Commercialization of free software projects is... it's necessary, but it also brings with it the same pain that capitalism brings everywhere that it goes. And so I think that you can do it right. I think that there are structural changes that you can make to your organization. You can't fix every organization involved in the Linux desktop, but you can at least influence the company where you work, the nonprofits where you volunteer, the boards you sit on, to move the perspective away from, 1997. I think a lot of us have this beef of like free software in particular, open source in general, has this kind of 1997 mentality for projects that were started back then. I mean, it's understandable that there's some legacy, and actually some of that legacy is a tendency to go off the rails with stuff that has nothing to do with the project or the software you're delivering or the product that you're building, if you want to believe that there is a product. And I think that was one of the other things that I really appreciated about George's talk, is that KDE and GNOME are products, and you need to look at them that way. And I feel like GNOME embraces this, particularly through the design team, that the desktop's coherent, right? Like, sorry, my big monitors over here, but like everything has like a coherent look and feel, and it's actually something that you don't get anywhere else. Mac OS, no, right? Like if, I don't know, Nikki Tonsky has a toot complaining about the rounded like the radius of window borders on macOS, just based on the different versions of the toolkit and everything. But like if you look at that screenshot, the windows are all crazy colors and like just nothing looks the same. Everything is kind of a, you know, either it's replicated with the wrong toolkit, or it's old versions of Apple's toolkits, or God knows, right? But it's not consistent, and GNOME is consistent. GTK is consistent. Windows, holy crap. So I haven't installed Windows for like 20 years, and I installed Windows very recently because I needed to do a Windows build of this silly bookmarking app that I'm making. I want to solve bookmarking. It's dumb. Sidebar. I don't really think there's a good reason that I don't have my bookmarks from 1996. You should just have that data. It's not very big and it's not very complicated and it doesn't mutate. So anyway, I was building clients for everything, and I was like, Windows, I'll just install it in a VM. And that was slow, and Windows would crash. And I was like, okay, I guess I'll get one of my laptops and I'll install Windows on that. And so I did. And I was like, okay, now pick a toolkit. Like how do people do this these days? Is C#, TypeScript? Like where do I... And if you go to Microsoft, they have like 5 different toolkits live right now. They have one, Maui, I don't even know how you pronounce this thing. That's like, it's like mobile and multi-platform something. And then they have all sorts of TypeScript things, but those are, you know, not multi-platform, or if they are, they're very Microsoft specific. And then they have like 3 different C# toolkits. There's like, yeah, XAML is still around. Cool. WPF. Like that's actually what I picked. I had a friend who runs Windows. He's a video game developer. And I was like, dude, what the hell do I do about Windows? And he's just like, C#, .NET 9, WPF. And I'm like, I'll take your word for it and I'll just use those things. And it's fine. But like color theming doesn't work. Like I need custom extensions, and like tweaks to get like the title bar to do dark mode when Windows is in dark mode. What the hell? It's so bad. So native applications are a kind of product unto themselves. Like the toolkit is a product, the environment is a product. And I don't necessarily know that I agree with George that like we don't need a shell at all, or I'm not even sure if that's really what he's saying, but there's a coherence to the GNOME desktop. And I haven't used KDE in a very, very, very long time. But a friend does, and he showed it to me, and like, it's pretty, it looks good. It's not really what I want, right? Like I want simple and boring, but like if you're into that, then rad. And I think a lot of people are, especially people coming from Windows. It looks good. It looks pretty consistent, right? I think that there's a product focus that it's helpful if people embrace, like developers, but also to a degree users, where you can kind of say like, look, like there's a reason it looks this way, it works this way, and we'll try to lean into that, right? And it's not necessarily like replicating macOS or replicating, God forbid, the web. The web has its advantages, but so there was a bunch of other stuff in here that I thought was great. So the idea of digital sovereignty being build versus buy, and where it's like build, right? And I think that this is an oversimplification, but the idea that like as a government, you just go back to running some IT infrastructure, right? And maybe you can even do like India, Ethiopia, I believe, like certain countries have their own clouds, like their, you know, government clouds that they run, and are they as hardened, as resilient as AWS? Not necessarily, but I think part of what you get in terms of that sort of hardening is you get it by usage. And so if everybody's on AWS, then it gets hardened, right? Software that nobody uses is really hard to get right and to harden. And so it goes for infrastructure. So I thought that was interesting. And I think that this picture of, I think a lot of people are thinking about the cloud when they think about digital sovereignty. The picture that it's like the whole stack, right? This matters. It's definitely the cloud. Like, you definitely need your data to go somewhere and for somebody to be managing the backups and whatever, versioning. But office workers need computers. They need to run a thing. And they don't need it to be so fancy, right? They just need it to work and not crash. And, like he said, for audio to work and for Bluetooth to work and all of these things. And it does, right? Linux is fine these days. I'm guessing whoever's watching this video already knows this. But there's a bit of a paradox here, which is ultimately you want Linux desktops and ultimately Linux phones, right? Like, you can use a phone for work, especially in the sense that, like, that's where the money is, that's where financing is. You're not going to take Apple's iPhone business away from them next year. You're just not. So initially it's kind of like, you remember the guy with like the neck pillow standing in the aisle of the airplane on his BlackBerry? That guy still exists. He's still equally annoying, and you still want to sell him a phone. And he still has the money to buy a phone. And so you probably want to come up with a product strategy there. Speaking of products. Anyway, the paradox of the delivery of the desktop is that at the moment, the buyer, the customer, the user is actually pretty technical, right? They are not necessarily an accountant working for the Danish government or whatever. If they're running Linux and they use LibreOffice and save Excel files, great. That is great. All of these things are true, right? But software developers, SREs, DevOps people, QAs, BAs, project managers, like, software is still huge. We're having a little moment, right? It's like the software industry is like, it's like a 5-year-old. Are you having some feelings? It'll pass, right? It'll pass, and software will still be equally important. It's still fully enmeshed in everything in our lives. And I think as far as like commercial entities go, we don't want it any less enmeshed. We want integration. We want things to be real-time-ish. And so we're going to keep working on it. And as long as every other industry exists, the software industry will continue to exist. And so software developers and software teams, infrastructure teams, they will continue to exist. And George is like nail on the head with how sad it is when you have one of, or hundreds of thousands, millions, I don't know, but many, even one person, but like many people who are foremost experts in Linux, who understand Linux inside and out, who've installed Linux, hundreds of thousands of times on hundreds of thousands of machines. And they run a Mac, right? Like, this is one of his beefs in his talk. That idea is offensive, and it's more and more offensive now as Apple's ecosystem begins to like really disrespect its users. You always knew it was headed in that direction. You always knew it was headed in that direction, but now it's kind of like the operating system doesn't make any sense. Upgrades come all the time. They break stuff. It's just very frustrating to be a technical person on a Mac these days, and these people know Linux. Developers know Linux. But this was like a follow-up tweet that George had, again, on Mastodon or Blue Sky or somewhere, where it was something to the effect of like one of the biggest compliments, quotes that he had from a friend of his or someone that he met, was that just because someone is super technical doesn't mean that they want to spend time fiddling with their operating system, right? Like their desktop environment. I don't. I'm pretty technical. Most developers I know, if they're on Linux, run Ubuntu, right? Like it's not the sexy choice, and that's why it's the choice, right? It's just it's the one, and it's been the one for a long time. And it's also fine, right? Like if they're happy, it's fine. But there are all these kind of like ecosystem issues with Linux that I think George is pointing to, and that I have also been pointing to, but I've been pointing to with a lot of people in the space outside of this space, because I've never been a Linux desktop person in my career. I was a back-end, not even infrastructure, right? But like back-end software developer, like team lead for, teams that wrote Clojure and Elixir and whatever. Build services that process data, shuffle the data from over here to over here, put it on disk, get it off of disk, the usual. Event streams and junk. And a lot of people do those jobs, and a lot of people would be happy with Linux today if they kind of knew that it was good. And if you could point them to a thing where you say, this is the one you install, just install this. Just install this, it works every time. Just install this, it's fine. Just install this, it gives you the right package management choices, right? Because there are so many layers of package management choices, and some of those choices are going to be made by the developer themselves. I'm gonna narrow in on developers in particular, because that's just kind of, those are the people I know. But I mean, same goes for QAs and SREs and whoever. They're gonna still use, PyEnv or ASDF or Mies or whatever for a lot of their development stuff. That will forever kind of be out of band of the operating system. And then you kind of have like a layer below that, arguably, which is sort of homebrew and things, Linux brew, whatever it's called on Linux. And I know people have beefs with that, and I've seen people kind of come around to it a little bit recently. And so the thing is like, even your most technical friends have opinions about things that are inherently out of date, right? Like if you haven't run Linux brew, homebrew for 10 or 15 years because you didn't like it back then, you're going to have a different opinion, or an opinion that diverges from the truth of what the thing is now. That's just, it's inherently true. And it's kind of true of the Linux desktop in general. The other component of this, which is, does it work well? It is kind of this question of like, how fast is it moving, right? So I'm a boring person, so I run Debian stable because I can't be arsed for 2 years, right? George is sort of the opposite sort of a person. He's building Linux stuff, which I don't, right? I do random things. Developers are gonna sit somewhere in the middle, but generally you have to expect that they don't want their operating system to break. They don't want to babysit it. People use stuff like ASDF and Mies and Brew because it works, right? It works out of the box more or less, and if you get an error, then like 5-10 years ago, you Stack Overflowed it, and these days you throw it in, probably just your agent, even, like not even a chat bot, but you just throw it in the thing. Used to be a Google search box, now whatever, and you get your answer back. And generally, like 98 times out of 100, you can just plug that in there and keep going, right? Because you don't want to spend your afternoon goobering around with Homebrew or ASDF or whatever. And so this kind of like tension, this sort of paradox of developers are capable and willing to solve those problems if they must, right? And they have to solve a lot of those problems on macOS because macOS is fundamentally broken these days. And the fact that they don't want to, that's not how they want to spend their day. If you are just straight out of college, maybe, right? Aditya, who runs like GNOME Nepal, he's convincing a lot of these college kids to install Linux for the first time. A lot of them don't really know anything about Linux. And so they're going to be excited and they're going to, customize everything, and they're going to do crazy, the same stuff we all did when we were 21, right? But now, like, it works out of the box, and then you're going to break it for fun. Great, right? But like 30, 40, 50, 60-year-old software developers don't want to do that. They just want to install it, and if something really breaks, they'd rather reinstall the whole laptop probably than actually get to the root of the problem, because they don't care. I don't care. I don't want to solve these problems on my computer. And so I mean, I will if I have to, but I prefer that I didn't have to. I want to keep doing whatever goofy TypeScript thing that I'm doing, whatever random stuff. Making dumb YouTube videos in my pajamas. I want to keep making the pajama YouTube video. So your target audience is developers, right? Is SREs. Like, these are the people. Maybe if you're lucky, product manager, right? But like the people who use Linux as their deployment target all day, every day, but in the cloud, get them to run it on their computer, desktop or laptop. Man, there's so much good stuff in here. So the other one is this, like, understanding the supply chain thing, right? Again, in the cloud, that's like, it's so much of what you do. And you hire people to do specifically that, like solve the supply chain problems. Like, where are my security risks? How are my customers' credit cards going to be stolen this time? Because it happens to every company, probably. That supply chain management thing brought to the desktop so that the desktop itself is reproducible and your builds on the desktop are reproducible. Like, that's a nice symmetry, right? That's kind of lovely. And so it's also a bit of it's funny, right? Because it's like a nod to free software. It's kind of like, you know what? if the thing that you made was free software, or because it is free software, reproducible builds are possible, right? These things are, simpatico. So this is, George framed it as a question, right? But like, where the question is, how do you make ops people love the Linux desktop? I would argue they kind of already do, right? The experience of being an ops person is in part having the access and the tools to be able to solve the fundamental problem, whatever that problem happens to be. Maybe it's supply chain issue this week. Maybe it is that you need momentarily a custom build of something the next week, right? Like ops people love open source because you can solve that second problem. Ops people love open source because you can understand the first. The fact that Linux won on the server is, if you are old enough to remember watching it happen, right? Because there was a point where Linux was kind of like, ugh. Like, either you really know what you're doing or you don't have any money. Those are the two reasons that you would run Linux on a server, right? And then other people were running, NT 3.5 or whatever, a mainframe. In one place I worked, watching Linux take over, you can kind of retrospect on that time and say, oh, okay, like what were the qualities about it that allowed it to do that? And being open, being inspectable, being repairable, being modifiable, right? Being free to distribute. If it hadn't been, it wouldn't have won. It's not, I don't think anyone would even argue. Like the Linux kernel is not the best possible architecture for a kernel. It's just the one that won, right? It's the same case with all of these things, right? It's not always the best designed thing. It's the thing that people are willing to plow decades into, and also has the right other ingredients. And these are the other ingredients. And so to a degree, ops people already love the Linux desktop. They love the underpinnings of the Linux desktop. And I think that probably what George is asking is, how do you get them to love the rest of the desktop? The consistency of the UI, the stability, now that it's pretty stable. I mean, at least in my experience, it's pretty stable. I think you just get them on it, right? That's going to be the answer, is like one by one, people move over. It will be, I'm pretty convinced it will be a self-fulfilling thing, but I'm guessing, I'm putting words in George's mouth, that the question is more, how do you create the conditions for this self-fulfilling growth of the Linux desktop? And to a degree, it's already happening, right? Like people are picking up Linux because they can't upgrade to Windows 11, or people are picking up Linux because they're sick of Apple's bullshit. Whatever the reason, people are moving over quickly. And so these folks, the more technical folks who may or may not be willing to get involved, lots of people are not, but the people that are sort of like customer number one, and also capable of helping out if they have the bandwidth. Those are the people that you want to make happy. And how do you make them happy? Like, what is the thing that's going to satisfy them? And I think that George actually has a lot of good answers to that question. Bazaar, right? Be opinionated. So you choose Flatpak because it works. You choose FlatHub because it works. Are there issues? Absolutely. But these are tools the ecosystem, and in particular the two biggest products, KDE and GNOME, have kind of been like, this is where we're putting our chips, right? We're going to bet on this thing, and hopefully it pans out. Bazaar is the link between the person who maybe hasn't touched the Linux desktop in 15 or 20 years and all that good stuff that the wider community is supporting. And so that's one way. to make ops people fall in love with the Linux desktop is give them something that works and give them a full stack thing that works, right? It's like you touch Bazaar and then it goes and talks to FlatHub and that installs Flatpaks, and at some point it will install Flatpak Next. And because you have this nice spike through the ecosystem that leans into the opinion, you can still have the modularity. If you still want to install an RPM or a deb or whatever, sure. You want to go install NixOS or Arch, do that. But as a baseline, you have this spike through the entire thing. And when it bottoms out, was this the bottom? I don't remember. Probably most people aren't going to watch this anyway for my hand movements while I sit in the basement. When it bottoms out, you bottom out on Flatpak and OCI and these other things. And certain people will care about that. My phone is beeping. That's annoying. I'm not going to edit this. There's this question in the talk, which is how do you get app developers to care about Flatpak Next? For somebody who didn't attend Linux App Summit or didn't watch George's talk yet, which is doubtful if you're watching this. But Flatpak Next is trying to solve some of the fundamental issues with the current version of Flatpak that are like sort of inherent to allowing people to escape the sandbox and create dangers and things. Go watch the talk, right? Zwick and Adrian did a talk on it. It's really useful. It's a good summary of kind of like the state of the union and why we need Flatpak Next. The two sides of this are kind of the infrastructure side, where people care about actually building out Flatpak Next and care about like the details, right? And then there's this spectrum, and then on the other end of the spectrum are the app developers who are just like, make it easier for me, make it nicer for me, give me better documentation, right? And so there's this question of like, how do you get developers to care about Flatpak Next? It depends what you mean. Do you care about the nitty gritty, or do you just care about getting your app out into the world? And Flatpak Next is the nicest possible way of doing that. It's also the default way of doing that. It's kind of both, because it's a spectrum, and somebody can move from one end of the spectrum to the other, where they release an app and then they're kind of like, oh, like there's a small niggly thing with Flatpak Next that I want to solve. There's, an aspect of a portal that I want to like help out with, or like a new portal or something like that. And so there's this comment about like treating app developers better. It's all one picture, right? It's kind of like giving them better tools for releasing their apps, and figuring out a way to make it really smooth to release apps into the Linux ecosystem. When you're ready to show your app really to the world, there's FlatHub. But like until that point, like people can just open up the Flatpak, right? As a few weeks ago, I forget when it actually landed already, but Bazaar can now open just raw Flatpaks and just install them. Yay, right? Like Windows and Mac OS people both are gonna be like, oh, installing things from a store on the desktop like is not necessarily a familiar pattern. It's like download the exe, download the MSI, download the DMG, download the PKG, double click that thing, and then click OK or drag the icon over or whatever. Like it's still kind of out of band, the installation process, and people are kind of accustomed to that. And so downloading a Flatpak and opening it with Bazaar is not going to be weird for people, I don't think. And then you do have this kind of lovely in the cloud ecosystem thing with FlatHub that makes it easier for people to discover software and the whole supply chain thing. And certain people care about that, but a lot of the developers that you're targeting don't. They just want to, please give me I have 5 seconds for you. Like, give me the thing. I want to install it. Then I'm going to poke around in it and see if it works. And then if it doesn't, I'm going to throw it away. Like, I don't have the attention span or the time for, and I mean, sample size, right? So like a lot of people are going to be in that mode. Some people will give things a shot and like an honest effort. Building an app ecosystem, I think, is kind of, oh man, it's an interesting one, right? Because you have a bunch of pieces to this. One is the idea that like some people will want to be commercial app developers, do the iOS thing, but over here in Linux land. And that's fine. I would argue that's a high bar, right? Show me 30% market share for the Linux desktop, and then we'll start caring about commercial app development on the Linux desktop, where it's like desktop first, because you can already install commercial software on the Linux desktop, but realistically, like most commercial software comes as a subscription. So it's like you pay some subscription and then you download clients, sorta, whether that's Excel or Photoshop or whatever. Like you download a thing and then where can I put it? Can I put it on my Windows machine, my Mac, my Linux thing? And if you're switching from Mac to Linux as a designer or something, like you just care that your subscription carries over, right? You don't give a shit mostly, unless you're already a pretty technical person and political for some value of political. Like you don't care that the Linux app store supports the thing that you want, because that's probably not how you're going to get it, right? If it's a commercial piece of software that you really rely on, like you're paying for it a different way. You pay for it through Microsoft.com or Adobe.com or whatever. Like you're not necessarily too concerned about the App Store and like the commercial vector for the App Store. Do we need that ultimately? Yes. But again, high bar. Like this is a high bar where you need, and I realize all these things are happening at once, but so yeah, it's a thing. Things are moving kind of slowly in that direction anyway. So the fact that it's a high bar is not necessarily problematic. But I think that there are other pieces to get right first. Off track again. So building an app ecosystem. I actually think that kind of this spectrum of like, I just do my day job and like I can use Linux instead of using a Mac. And I am invested in the thing that I'm using, because like if I were on Windows or Mac, I would write some native applications for fun. This is the thing that I would do. Or I would write a little game or whatever. Then I'll do that on Linux if I'm using Linux every day. That's part of the app ecosystem. But I think that weirdly, a big component of this is actually bindings. So as someone who, I mean, I really wrote like the windowing equivalent of Hello World as a kid, like in my 20s, like never really wrote native anything for the Linux desktop. Now in middle age, I'm kind of like, oh, like let me do some stuff. And it's kind of like, oh yeah, you know, like the GJS and the TypeScript bindings and stuff are Like the type information is there. Somebody's published that. I think the documentation can generally be better in the whole, like, how do you actually produce an app for the Linux desktop? Whether this GNOME or KDE, like, it would be nice to have some happy paths there. But because the Linux desktop kind of obsesses about bindings, it's sort of like, oh, do you want to write your thing in Lua? Do you want to write it in Raku? Like, sure, whatever. Like, somebody's doing those bindings. It exists and you can play, right? Like, a weird advantage, man, this is just, it's going to be an hour of non sequiturs. A weird advantage of the LLM explosion is that a lot of people are going to be pushed to use them at work. And when they come home on the weekends, they're going to miss like doing real programming, right? And like some people will use LLMs on the weekends because they're making like, you know, home automation thing with like an e-ink display in the entryway to their house so that their spouse and their kids can like all check the schedule for the week or whatever. The thing that my mom always did on a whiteboard in our dining room. That sort of stuff I see people using LLMs for, but like the joy of programming is tinkering and it's problem solving and it's understanding the detail as you dig through it. It's a process, right? And LLMs don't, I mean, there's a spectrum of LLM usage. They don't destroy that process, but it's sloped and you tend to slide downhill where it's kind of like, oh, I got it to write a function, right? And then the next thing you know, it's like, can you make me an app to do blah? And it writes a bunch of terrible code for you, but it works and you're kind of like, good enough, ship it. And I think that the joy of actually doing the creation of making software, like a lot of software developers in particular are going to miss that. And they're going to come to their home computer on the weekends. They'll close their work laptop and open up their personal laptop, right? And start playing, and they're going to play around. And if they're on a desktop that they own and control, it's hard to describe, I think, especially to like people who've been in the space for a long time, that like, this doesn't feel accessible, right? A lot of people have been on the web for a long time and like default to creating apps on the web. And the joy of making something native is foreign to them. And so if you give them kind of a landing pad where it's sort of like, here's the quick start, here's how you get going with, you know, start with the easy ones, right? It's kind of like TypeScript, Python, Ruby, I don't know. And then you get into like Go, Rust, God forbid C, right? But like here are all the different ways that you can create an app and just go ahead and do that thing and like have a bit of a play. I think that a lot of the documentation is really good. And then you get tools like Builder and Workbench. In the GNOME world, I've apologized, KDE people, I don't know that much about what that ecosystem looks like right now. But like, at least in the GNOME world, you have tools that sort of like guide you through and show you how to do some of this stuff. So you like get a quick start kind of experience, but like live in some ways, rather than just like read the docs and stumble through and then copy paste like one-liner code samples over and like build up your thing that way to like play. You can play on the desktop itself. That's going to be good for Linux, I think. That's a prediction of mine. I'm going to predict that, particularly if the documentation can stay apace, right? Where GTK and libadwaita in the GNOME world and Qt in the KDE world, like if people can like pick it up and just get going and play on their own a bit, that they will, and you're going to see some weird fun apps come out of it. And some of them might be throwaway, but some of them might end up being really serious. You don't know. So the app ecosystem, I think it's going to be good. I think it's going to be good. And figuring out ways to like encourage people and show people like you can do it, right? Like, and there will be some LLM stuff in there. Like particularly, I think some of the most interesting LLM assisted development that I've seen is from really senior developers that I know, right? Like, lots of people that I know that other people wouldn't know, but like people that I've seen out there, like Wes McKinney, for example, we were like Apache Arrows and Pandas, right? Like that guy. He's released a bunch of different stuff, and it's kind of like very clearly LLM assisted, and he's a very competent developer. And so you're going to see people create things for the Linux desktop because they happen to be on a Linux desktop now over the next few years. People who weren't, and they come and they're kind of like, GTK, cute. Like, let me play with these things and build something up. And they might build it over, a few weeks or a few months. And they will show that to their coworkers and their friends. And then those people are going to pick up those same tools and play. And the real play will happen kind of like a bit away from LLMs, I think. But I don't want to make any predictions about that territory. I've been talking a lot about super senior developers, right? The really junior people. This was one of George's things is like, man, there's so many good takes in here. Gamers will save Linux, right? Like it's awesome. I think it's really, really nice to think about the youngest of the younger generation of new programmers, technologists who are going to come in and do interesting work, and they're going to find something satisfying about. I think it's the same as like anything you really love, right? Climbers are like this, like people who do bouldering or like full on like rope and dangerous climbing. Like they're just so addicted to it and they want to show other people. If you've ever met a climber, you know what I'm talking about, that they're just like, just come for a climb. Like it doesn't matter if you're good, bad, whatever. Like it's all personal best. It's not competitive. It's just for fun, right? But there's a joy in it. And it's kind of the same with like car people, right? Like car people are like, let's get it up on the hoist and let's see what's under there. And they talk about it and then go on forums and whatever. And if you have like 15-year-olds who are playing a lot of games, and a lot of those games are on Linux now, some of them, not all of them, not everyone who drives a car is a car person. I'm not. That they're going to start finding joy in mucking about, right, in the innards of the thing. And I think that this is a really, really lovely concept, since gamers will save Linux. Bound up in that is succession planning, right? You got a lot of people who are aging out of the development process and the maintainership, and you need to figure out how you're going to hand the reins over to the next people. If you haven't done it already, you're behind, right? If you are my age, like mid 40s, or, God forbid, edging up toward retirement, like if it's the last decade of your career and you're working in free and open source software, if you're working in proprietary software, whatever, it's already in the bin anyway, it doesn't matter. But if you're working on free and open source software and you can see like the end of your career coming, and you are not spending most of your time training up the next person or people, like get your shit together, right? Like you need to worry about who's going to come and take your place. This is the most adult thing you can do, is figure out there's a weird thing in the States right now, right? Maybe it's other places, about like having kids. That's not it, right? Like replicating biologically doesn't do this, right? You have to invest the time in the person who shows up, and that person may not be the person you wanted, right? Like mentorship has many aspects to it. You're going to find that mentoring people is, it's not going to be like a Karate Kid kind of scenario for a lot of you, right? And so you're going to need to make space for folks and figure out who you can mentor and who can own things. I know particularly in the hand waving at my GNOME desktop, right? Particularly in the GNOME ecosystem, there's this idea that you need to get away from maintainership to a degree. And I think that insofar as that represents gatekeeping, yes. But as someone who's tried to build and has built like large kind of like democratic communities, whether that's a co-op or a nonprofit, a lot of nonprofits over the last 5 years, actually, like a half dozen. But like co-ops, nonprofits, people who are involved in local government will often find this. A friend of mine he's an executive director of a 501c3. And he traveled around and he met some other kind of like nonprofits globally. He's met many, actually. He was talking about one literature nonprofit. They sort of work on kind of like ancient literature and translations and stuff, like painful sort of slog work. And then you publish the thing, and then you move on to the next one. Like you just keep publishing books, and they are a task to get out. He was like, you think of them as being really large. This organization, it's like 3 dudes in their apartments. They don't have an office, right? They're scrappy and they're small. And this is always going to be true. Even in commercial settings, this is true. There's 1 or 2 people who really own a product, who own a piece of software in their bones, right? Maybe that person's the team lead, but not always. I've worked on a team where that person was the QA, right? Like the person who ensures that it gets done. That's what you're worrying about in your succession planning, right? You're not worried about picking the smartest person. You're not worried about picking the person who really wants the job, right? A lot of these things are volunteer-esque. It's the person who will be there in 15 years. That's the person that you're looking for when you're doing the succession planning. And so I actually think that George has an interesting idea, right? It's like, go out to Discord, get 30,000 kids in there or whatever its counts are. And like, let the cream rise to the top, right? Like find people who are willing to learn the tech and actually get in and get their hands dirty and solve problems. And then they need to find a job because they're 22 or whatever, and they go get a job, and then they start working in the space, and they're committed to the idea, and they will continue to deliver until they're old and gray like us. Succession planning. It matters a lot. I'm going to keep talking about it until I die, I think. Okay. Owning your metrics. I don't have anything to add to that. That was just good. And I think I'm not really a metrics person. So I think what George is doing there is interesting. And yeah, it's out of my wheelhouse. So going back to the app ecosystem thing, sorry, that's my phone. Go is an interesting one, right? Of all the language bindings that you can do, Go is maybe it's the one, right? You need garbage collection, you need modern-ish language design, you need it to be boring. And there was a moment in my youth where we were kind of like, maybe it's C#. And a different group of people were like, maybe it's Java. And it was neither, right? Like, my Linux desktop applications are not written in C# or Java, mostly. I guess there are a couple of each. But the cloud ecosystem is like just dominated by Go. And it's a language that anybody can read. It is pretty snappy, but it's still garbage collected. It's pretty damn boring. It's like the definition of boring. Do I like it? Not particularly. I don't like Go, but like I understand why it exists and why it was designed the way that it is and the sort of success that it's seen. And it's fine. Sorry, I laughed too loud. I can see you in the red line. So I actually think that this is like, it's a good opportunity, right? To like appeal to a wide group of people to build apps. And there are many other aspects of cloud native desktop, but I won't even address those things, right? I think the interesting thing to me is actually embracing people that live in that space, and bringing them over by giving their go-to language bindings, right? There are the sort of people that like Saturday morning, they wake up and they start writing Haskell or OCaml or whatever, like a thing that they don't do at work because they don't work at Jane Street. But I think they're the minority. Like, I think a lot of people are just like, there was this blog post I can't find anymore. And the question was something like, what is your Visual Basic? Or Visual Basic? What is your basic? Right? Like, you have a go-to language that you just, it's not the best language, but it's the one that you kind of know inside and out, and you can go to, and you can get stuff done, and you can just start like, and it's probably, dynamic, or certainly at least garbage collected, and you can get after it and get something accomplished. For a lot of people, that's Go. For a lot of people, that's TypeScript. For absolutely no one is that Rust, right? Like, no one is like, I'm lightning fast at getting things built in Rust. No. I mean, you can be good at Rust, but so, cloud native desktop, aligning with allies. This was the thing that I had in my keynote, right? And the allies I was talking about were more product focused in a way. It's kind of like who are the distros and who are the people building, Nextcloud and Bitwarden, although Bitwarden had a thing this week, so God knows. But like, folks who are in the space that care about free software and open source for the right reasons, and they have a business model preferably that will keep them alive and continuing to exist 20 years from now. Because businesses and universities and governments do not want to invest in your weekend spreadsheet. They just don't. They want to invest in a thing that they believe they can get 5-year support contracts on or longer. So the support, the longevity of these things matters a lot. And I think George means this in a different way, right? Like, aligning with allies, we're like, I have an arrow poking out of like a cloud native desktop there, where it's kind of like the cloud native people are your allies, right? Like there are other people out there who are also your allies. Like go out there and find them and get a coherent like cross-pollination going between these things. And the other sort of note here that I have it in all caps, right? Upstream first. And this is, I mean, there's the grumpy version of upstream first, which is I need you to stop forking and maintaining a fork. And I need to stop forking and maintaining my own forks. That's kind of low bar, maybe not grumpy, low bar upstream first. And then there's kind of like high bar upstream first. The highest bar of upstream first would be web services, web applications that, and I don't mean Kubernetes or hosted Postgres. I mean like Monday.com or whatever gets advertised to me on YouTube. Like these apps, discourse, right, that are open source, that someone else can host and they can provide the service of hosting that thing. And when I say this, everyone is like, oh, gross. Like, you mean like cPanel kind of thing? Like, take this garbagey PHP app and host it yourself and try to make like $5 a month. No, that's not what I mean. I mean, most of the web apps out there are kind of bad, and they're owned by a single company that dictates the product direction, and often that product direction is like going off the rails, and sometimes it takes a really long time to go off the rails. GitHub took quite a long time to go off the rails, even after the Microsoft purchase, but it finally happened. If you have backends, services, web front ends, and clients all kind of bundled together in a way that allows other people to make money from distributing them. Distribution now is hosting, services, and support, right? Mostly support. Same as always. That like you can do that thing. And that's the highest bar in my mind, upstream first. It's kind of like who are the group of folks that can get together around a product that they don't own and control, and serve somewhere. It's a really high bar. I mean, for the time being, like upstream first on the desktop, in the infrastructure, libraries, systems programming, great. That's a great start. And then you can do cloud infrastructure stuff as well, right? It's kind of like you can do upstream first on maybe not Postgres because that's a hard code base to contribute to, but stuff like the whole CNCF ecosystem, right? Like it's very doable to contribute into those spaces to make a positive difference. And then on the other side, there's like commercial entities that can benefit from the work that you're doing, and it can be kind of like, symbiotic relationship, as long as you're contributing to upstream. Same with the desktop, but like I think that the desktop actually has been doing this for longer. So before the cloud, every project has to have its AI conversation. I'm not going to touch that, but yeah, it's true. Well, okay, I will touch it. There's a different project that I saw, and a very senior developer kind of like made a very public post, and then sponsors came and were like, whoa, his post is very anti-AI. Like, is the project anti-AI? Is it? Because one very senior developer decided that he or she, they are anti-AI, anti-LLM. No, it's probably not, right? And so, like, uh, someone mentioned this to me, this idea that, like, it's better to say that you don't know or that you don't have a policy than to just let it be a vacuum that's filled with whoever has something to say from the community. And I think that that's generally true. And I think that probably most projects would benefit from admitting to themselves that they don't know and they don't have a policy yet. We're figuring it out, right? Because it's tough and it's weird. Anyway, the last most important point on my little sheet here is we got people jobs, right? Like, I think kudos to George and everybody else in the wide universal blue ecosystem, where actually getting somebody a real job, right? Not a 6-month contract, not a grant, a job, that is what people are looking for. That is what will keep them around. It's what will keep them interested. And preferably those jobs feed back into the projects that you're doing. But at worst, you have somebody who is engaged, who was a part of the project in a way that moved them into that space. I think the saddest is an internship or like contract work that just sits as like a line item on somebody's resume, and then they go get a job in some other random thing, right? And it's just like, yeah, I did this once, and then I go do something completely different, and this is just kind of the backdrop to, and I mean, it'll happen, right? But the more that you can dovetail these things together, where like people can contribute to the project and the project can be interested and excited in finding those people work, it's kind of unsexy, right? You become your software project or mega project, if you're talking about like KDE and GNOME, it becomes a bit of an HR department. You're gonna have to be okay with that. Like, it's not just about getting code written. It's not just about drawing the prettiest icon. Like, it is about people, and it's about people's real lives, and their real lives are in need of money. And so the more that you can line those things up, the better. And I mean, I've been beating that drum and or dead horse for a while now, and I think that the Universal Blue folks are doing amazing work in that regard, that they have like a real number that they can pin to that, like to that idea that they want to find people jobs. So nice work, George. I loved the talk. It was just warm and delightful, and I think that is I envy your energy level, and I think that the work that you're doing is almost entirely focused in like the right direction. Like, it's hard to say that about a project, to be like, I don't even agree with everything that they're doing, right? The Universal Blue projects, I think that there are like some things that are like, oh, interesting. But I think it's all forging in in a direction that I can get behind, where I think that that it's going good places, and it's that sort of momentum where you don't get stuck in like stop energy or maintainership roadblocks or, you know, weird politics or whatever. Not to say that Universal Blue is free of politics. I'm sure it's not. But I think that I think that the outcomes that they've demonstrated, probably more with Bazite than anything else, where like just you see people talk about Bazite online and it's overwhelmingly positive. And the ideas and the fact that like, I think I spoke to George the first time like a year ago or close to a year ago, something like that. And his ideas haven't changed, right? Like he's not saying things to make people happy. He's not saying the thing you want to hear. He's saying the thing that needs to be said. And I think that that's real leadership. And it's impressive and it's cool. So thanks, George. Thanks for the talk. Thanks for the work that you and everybody else at Universal Blue is doing. This was supposed to be like a 10-minute video. So I'm going to stop now. Till the next pajamas video in whatever room of my house it happens to happen in. See ya if anybody listened to this.